Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And how you doing? My name is Commander Curt, and welcome to a special edition of Strummin Time Live. First of all, I must tell you that, yes, Commander Curt here is going to be 40. I don't feel 40, but I'll be 40 on Monday. And here today to help me celebrate my birthday and to talk about, reminisce about the olden days and radio and the good old days. And gentleman that who inspired me to get into radio a few years back. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Mr. PatO'Day to our show, Strummin Time Live. Let's give him a round of applause. Hiya, Pat. How you doing? Welcome to Strummin Time Live.
May it be recorded.
Here we go.
That the announcement there of one of my infrequent appearances brought thunderous applause. I like that. Curt, how are you?
I'm doing good. And yourself, Pat?
I was so thrilled when at the hydroplane race you came up to me and asked me if I would be on your show. I rarely am on television anymore or do anything other than hydroplanes and little occasional interviews. So it's fun to be here, and I'm delighted.
Oh, I'm glad that
Your birthday, you're going to be how old?
I'm going to be 40.
See, I had a real one on the 24th.
Uh-huh.
I had one of the real 40s. Those are flyweight.
Oh, yeah.
I had one of the heavyweight ones. Don't ask me which one it was.
I won't.
Doesn't matter. You know, it's funny, a lot of people who listened to me when they were growing up, and see, I went on the air in Seattle in 1959.
1959.
Right, so which is almost 40 years ago, right?
Wow, yes.
So there's a lot of people that imagine that because I was very young then when I went on the air, but people imagine you cannot tell that a person is very young on the air. You know, the voice matures and so on. So they know they listened to me when they were 10 or 15, and now they are 55, so they assume I'm dead. You know,
well, you're
I
not
couldn't
dead.
still be alive, right? But anyway, but I'm not. I just had my triple treadmill and did the whole thing. I had a dizzy spell. Turns out it was a virus, but I had some dizzy spells, so I went and I passed my treadmill and my all that with flying colors.
Good.
It was so good I've increased to 2 packs a day. That's how good it was.
Good. I just had a physical myself, and I checked out pretty good. The doctor gave me a thumbs up. So, you know, I must say,
The
Pat,
doctor gave you a thumbs. You told me no one-liners. You told me no one-liners.
No, that wasn't. Anyway, I'm glad you're here on Strummin Time Live.
That's funny. Thumb. I've never seen the thumb before.
Supposed to be funny, ladies and gentlemen.
That's a new method. The thumb. It's always the well. Anyway.
Anyway, this is a family fun show. All right, let's get down to basics. How did you get your start in radio? What caused you to get into radio itself?
My father. I come from a family of many ministers. And my father was a minister. And back in the days when radio was much like television today, back before, you know, rock and roll and radio as we know it now and music, stations had programs. And my father had a church religious-oriented radio program every day on KMO in Tacoma from 9 to 9:15. And so I'd go to the, 7, 8, 9, I'd go to the station with him every day and sit and watch the whole thing. And the ministry never appealed to me. I don't know why, it just didn't. But radio, I watched the whole thing and thought, wouldn't that be? So when I was a little kid, I remember the Seattle Times wrote a story, they interviewed me this summer, and I told how I used to emulate Leo Lassen, or try to emulate him, imitate Leo Lassen, who was one of the legendary radio figures in Seattle that did the Seattle Rainier base. He was the Dave Niehaus of the 30s and 40s and early 50s. And so I always admired him, his ability to speak so rapidly and with such great excitement. He's like a Niehaus.
Yeah.
Very colorful. And, but then of course, by the time I arrived in radio, I quickly put the sports play-by-play newscaster goals aside because there was a brand new thing just beginning to happen, and that was called rock and roll.
Rock and roll. How did rock and roll become a common household phrase? How did that come into existence, Pat?
Well, the phrase was coined by black musicians. going back into the early 50s, they'd refer to the music that they were playing as rock and roll, but was then later used in certain songs that became popular, and Bill Haley and the Comets, and the word rock and roll evolved. Rock and roll as far as radio, would you like to know a little history about rock and roll?
Yes, I would like to do that.
Well, radio stations, when television came along in the late 40s and early 50s, television took all of the performers that had been radio performers. Whether it was Jack Benny or Bob Hope or the Lone Ranger or Ozzie and Harriet, you name it, they all went over to television. So radio was left with nothing. And radio stations were just a catastrophe at that time. I mean, you know, they were all losing humongous amounts of money. Lester Smith, who was Danny Kaye's partner, who eventually owned the Mariners, who I worked for eventually and was my partner in the concert business. Anyway, he bought KJR in 1950, late 54, for $300,000.
Wow.
Yeah, can you imagine? I mean, a big radio station with its equipment and studios and towers and pianos and all at $300,000, because to own a radio station at that time was a license just to lose money. But something new was happening. A couple of gentlemen that had about 6 radio stations each. Their names were Todd Storrs, who had stations in St. Louis and New Orleans, and then another gentleman named Gordon McClendon. And Gordon had stations in Dallas, Shreveport, and various points. Anyway, they were sitting in a bar in New Orleans, kind of singing the blues about how ugly it was to own radio stations and what to do with them. And they were both inspired radio broadcasters and knew there had to be something that could be done. So it was Todd Storrs that said, you know, Gordon, he said, have you noticed how ever increasingly jukeboxes are popular? He said they're putting more, if you're reading Billboard, you look at the jukebox industry is just going up like this. And he said, secondly, he said, this show on television, the Top 10, the Hit Parade, Your Hit Parade, he said, that thing is #1 in the ratings. He said, what if we were to take the top 30 songs in the United States and take our radio station, and we'll remember those guys that used to do those evening shows after the networks?
Yes.
We called them disc jockeys. Let's call them disc jockeys, and let's play the top 30. We'll start with number 30 and play right down to #1, and in between we'll do commercials, and then when we get down to #1, we'll go back to 30 and start over again. And then we should have some news, so why don't we do 5-minute newscasts? Now, up until that time, any self-respecting newscast was 15 minutes or a half an hour long. So that was the birth of radio, frankly, as we know it today.
Wow, that's
They
neat.
hired these guys that were to entertain between the records, to do the commercials, give the time and the temperature, and to give the weather frequently. And radio switched from being that thing that had sat in the corner of the living room that the family sat around at night and Mom knitted and Dad smoked his pipe and read the paper and the kids did their homework and listened to the Lone Ranger and Bob Hope and Jack Benny and shows like that. It switched to being a companion, something you didn't have to focus on. It was just there with you because there was the music, the time, and the temperature and news every hour. That coincided with radio becoming, through engineering breakthroughs, radio becoming far more portable. In 1950, when you went and purchased a new automobile, you paid extra to have a radio in the car.
Oh, really?
And many people didn't take that option.
It was a luxury, huh?
It was a luxury. Why do you need it? Because you don't really drive around in your car listening to the Lone Ranger. Right? I mean,
That's true. That's
you
true,
go
ladies and
home
gentlemen.
to listen to the Lone Ranger. And like television hasn't worked so great in cars, has it?
No, it
because they
hasn't.
were programs.
Right.
And so radio, then that radio set that people listened to got moved out to the garage and was replaced by the television set. But the new kind of radio was in the kitchen and the bathroom and out in the shop and in the bedroom. The clock radio came about that would wake you up in the morning.
Kind of like a background noise type of thing.
Right,
It's
the
always
two
there.
things, television's destruction of radio, and then radio's, the electronics industry producing a smaller radio, coupled with the third thing that made it happen, and that was rock and roll.
And that's, ladies and gentlemen, that's where PatO'Day comes in and I see that Washboard Mama is as a presentation for us here.
I have heard of Washboard Mama.
You've heard of Washboard Mama, ladies and gentlemen. She is.
I gotta come in looping.
Oh, bless her heart. Look at this.
I'm coming in.
Come on in there, Washboard Mama.
Oh, dear.
She, I guess, in a tribute to my 40th birthday
Hello,
here,
hello.
she's got.
Washboard Mama, how are you?
This is PatO'Day, legendary
Oh,
PatO'Day from KJR Radio, and he's telling us about it. So what's up, Washboard Mama? What do you have?
I
for us
was on
today?
the air when you were a little girl.
Oh, really?
That's how old I am.
He's 40. So what's up, Washboard Mama?
Well, I thought you were 40. Or aren't
Yeah.
you over the hill yet?
I came over the hill driving to here.
With his thumb up like
I thought I heard him say the doctor gave him thumbs up.
Yes.
Well, I don't know about that.
What's up?
What's up?
Yes.
Well, look at here. I got this little thing here. You wind it up.
Uh-huh.
It says over the hill. It's over the hill.
I'll crank this up here.
Yeah.
Over the hill. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a lovely gift. Am I going to be carrying a cane from now on? Raising
Well,
cane?
I don't know.
So I understand you're going to be going on vacation for a while.
Yeah, yes. We're going to be gone. Oh, I'm going to be gone for about a month tomorrow, and then we'll be back.
Uh-huh. Oh, good. Well, I'm glad
Curt,
to...
you didn't seem appropriately appreciative of that. That's a lovely gift you were given there.
I'm sorry, Washboard Mama. Thank you, Pat.
That's a treasure.
I will treasure this for when I get over the hill. It's got beady little eyes and everything else. That's neat. Cool. Just kind of goes
Look
around
at that.
there.
See, you can take it in a bar and sit down and have a few drinks and watch it.
Cool for when I go over the hill.
Oh, yeah. Well, you aren't quite over the hill, but you'll be over, let's see now.
Okay.
Over the hill, Monday?
Monday, yes. Monday,
Whoa.
officially October 6th.
I was over
ladies
the
and
hill a
gentlemen.
long time ago.
We won't get into that. Well, thanks for stopping by, Washboard
You're
Mama,
welcome.
and you have a good vacation.
Yeah,
and
you too.
shake hands with the legendary
I
PatO'Day.
did.
A thrill to
Sure,
meet you,
baby.
Washboard.
Right.
May I call you Wash?
Washi.
Thank
Washi.
you.
Yeah, I'm from Washington.
Thanks, Washboard Mama. All right,
Yeah,
ladies and
see you
gentlemen,
later.
Washboard Mama.
Bye.
Applause. Thanks for stopping by, Washboard Mama. Washboard Mama, ladies and gentlemen, for those
She's a
of you-
regular fixture on your
Yes,
show.
she is. She comes out and she plays the washboard with the band or the musical instrument that people are here, and along with Washboard Willie. And that reminds me too, Washboard Willie was not able to be here today, and I was supposed to. He has a message for me. He says, "How you all doing there, Commander Curt? Happy 40th birthday. May you have many more 40 birthdays." So, anyway, well, let's get back to talking to PatO'Day here, ladies and gentlemen. And like I said, PatO'Day is a legend in radio. He inspired me to get into radio. Now, tell us about your most frightening moment in radio.
Most frightening moment in radio.
Yes.
I guess we used to live in constant fear of this, and that was that there was nothing automated in those days. All through the 60s and the first half of the 70s, we had our turntables, and the records went on the turntable. And if you listen to the hits of the 50s and 60s and 70s, most of them were about 2.5 minutes long. And on each side of the songs were, commercials. But anyway, because they were 2.5 minutes long, that was the total length of time we had to go take care of other business when we were on the air, particularly on a 6-hour shift. And, you'd go and you'd actually make coffee downstairs in the kitchen, and you knew the songs by heart, and you'd go racing back upstairs and get into the control room just in time to snap the mic switch. But I guess the most frightening thing to me was one of my early days at KJR. I'd wanted to work at KJR, which was the reigning giant, to become the reigning giant of rock and roll so badly, because that was a big station when I was growing up. Had the job, and I'd been there about 2 days, and I went out to the car because I had this piece of paper with all kinds of brilliant ad libs on it I was going to use, and I'd left my preparation in the car. I went out to the car to get it and locked myself out of the station. Now, you understand, you stand there in stark fear. You see your entire career going right in the toilet, right? Because the most unforgivable sin in radio then was to have the needle going click, 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 click around the inside of the record, because then, we wanted to be seamless radio. Nothing ever ended. Everything started before the next thing ended. And yes, it did take a cement block through the kitchen window of the radio station, and, which I had to replace, and I made it. But that caused me to have a dream that I have to this day. You know, do you have repeating dreams?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
You know, viewers, I'm sure you have a dream that keeps returning in some form or another. I have the dream that I've left the radio station and I'm somewhere in the car or going somewhere, and that record is ended. It's going click, 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 click. And you know, in that dream when you're trying to get somewhere and you can't quite get there, there are all these obstacles in your way.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, I wake up just, you know, knowing that my career is finished. I'm through. I'm a fool. People are laughing at me that I'm unreliable. Wake up in a cold sweat and discover, well, here I am on San Juan Island, and I look out the window at the water and decide, everything's okay.
Everything's
after
okay.
All. It was just a dream.
That's right.
But you know, it's a recurring nightmare.
Yeah, or like deja vu.
I've had a lot of funny things happen to me in the
Yeah,
business.
tell us about one of your
well,
most
the
funniest
concert
experience.
business. You know, was just such an electric, so to speak, never-ending cavalcade of chaos. You know, our company, which I started as PatO'Day and Associates, and then when we opened our Dallas office in '69, we renamed it Concerts West. And we eventually had offices in Chicago and Atlanta and Los Angeles, New York. We did about 780 shows in 1976. But I think one of the funniest things was that I was with Three Dog Night, and we played Winnipeg. And at that time, the groups would haul their equipment in the plane with them. And there's because there was the speakers and the amps and so on. And that was before the road shows had the elaborate lights and big PA systems and everything. So we could haul the equipment for the tour in the plane. So that morning, Bob Tomaso, who was the road manager of Three Dog Night, had hurried out to the airport in the wee small hours of the morning with the equipment truck to get the equipment put on the plane. Now, we were in Winnipeg that night, and we were playing the next night at the University of Tennessee down in Knoxville. So we had quite a trip to make that day, and everything was done by commercial plane at that time. So we had partied the night before because Corey Wells, the lead singer of Three Dog Night, it was his birthday, and we'd partied hard. We were all drinking what was called Velvet Hammers.
Oh.
You ever heard of a Velvet Hammer?
Yes, I have.
Oh, it's about 7 jiggers of God only knows what. So anyway, most of us were velvet hammered that morning, and I was sound asleep. I was unconscious. Tomaso had gotten up late and gotten the truck with the roadies out to the airport late, and they wouldn't put the equipment on the plane.
Oh, boy.
They said, you know, that equipment has to go on first before the other luggage, so it can't go on the plane. Well, Tomaso was very creative. He was a guy about 6'3", had red hair, a wild man. He was the roadie for Three Dog Night, and his motto was, you know, I'll always make it. Never worry, I'll get it done. So Tomaso, now I want to switch the scene. At the party the night before, while we're downing the Velvet Hammers, Jimmy Berry, who was the publicist for Three Dog Night, thought he ought to get out of town earlier. I was going to fly with the group, and he was going to leave town earlier. And so on an early flight, and so we decided that we would switch plane tickets because he needed to go in my reservations and I needed to go in his with the group. So we switched plane tickets. He became PatO'Day and I became Jimmy Berry. The night before, under the influence of the Velvet Hammers, made a lot of sense, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Tomaso now needs to get the equipment on the plane, doesn't know that Barry and I have switched, thinks I'm on the plane, and goes back to the hotel and says, what am I going to do? He calls Northwest Airlines and said, this is Dr. Tomaso. He says, I'm calling from Seattle. He said, you have a patient of mine that is on a plane that's about to depart from your airport. He said, I want that plane returned to the terminal immediately. He said, the man has the wrong pacemaker in his heart, and it would be very dangerous for him to be flying. Tomaso theorizes that if the plane comes back, they'll have time to get the equipment on, because the guy said if they'd had another 2 minutes, they could have gotten the equipment on. Now, poor Barry, he's on the plane. He's worried enough anyway because he's just gone through customs, immigration as he's leaving Winnipeg because the plane lands in Chicago to change planes. He's just gone through his PatO'Day and gone because they didn't ask him for identification. They accepted. So he's on the plane. The plane has gone down to the end of the runway, turned the corner, is ready to take off when suddenly everything stops. The co-pilot comes out of the cockpit. They get on the microphone and said, would Mr. PatO'Day please identify himself?
Oh.
Well, Barry sits there and says, oh my God, they figured it out, right? They figured it out. And so they come, he raises his hand meekly, and they come to him and they said, Mr. Barry, they said, Mr. O'Day, we just had a call from your doctor, and you have an inoperative pacemaker. And he said, we're taking you back to the terminal. Well, now he says, oh my God, I'll go back to the terminal. The doctor will be there. Customs will be there. The doctor will look at me and say, you're not PatO'Day, right? And I'll go to jail for sure. So he tells the co-pilot, he says, my doctor's always pulling that stuff. He said, hey, my pacemaker's fine. He says, just take off and go. He says, don't worry. And the co-pilot says, are you sure? He said, your physician was very concerned. He said, he's done this about 4 times. He's an older guy. He's always he always thinks he gave me the wrong pacemaker. He says, don't worry about it. Just take off and let's get to Chicago. So the co-pilot moved him up to the very front row so the stewardess sitting right across in the jump seat could keep an eye on him. And off they went to Chicago. But now they land in Chicago, and poor Barry is scared to death for me, because he'd seen me partying the night before. I mean, I was throwing them down. I was on the tables. I mean, I was an act the night before, and here he's scared. I'm doing all this with a faulty pacemaker in my heart, right? So Barry quickly calls to me, and now I'm in bed still. It's like he's landed in Chicago at 8:45. I'm still sacked out. I've got a hangover. The phone rings, and it's Barry. And he's saying, Pat, get to your doctor quick. Your pacemaker isn't working, right? I'm hungover, and I'm... Who? You know, he said, Pat, your pacemaker isn't working. This is Jimmy Barry. And I don't... What do you... He says, I'm in Chicago. The doctor stopped the airplane. So, and I'm trying, I said, I don't wear a pacemaker. He's, Pat, wake up, it isn't working. I said, I don't wear a pacemaker. So finally, I convince him I don't wear a pacemaker in my heart and everything is fine. I hang up the phone, I call and I order coffee. It's time to wake up and I'm saying, what in the heck was that all about? When Bob Tomaso bangs on my door and he walks in, he says, the equipment, we're gonna have to charter a plane for the equipment to get to Knoxville. He said, guys, I missed the airplanes. I tried. I even called the airplane and told him you had a faulty pacemaker. He's, wait a minute, why are you still here? I said, oh. So that to me was, was funny.
What a neat story.
It really is. You were asking about rock and roll radio.
Yes.
You know, I keep waiting for a commercial break.
Well, we'll be back in just a minute, ladies and gentlemen.
I keep waiting for a commercial
Well, here's our
commercial break. Howdy, folks. Wacky Wally here.
Hi, Wacky Wally.
I heard PatO'Day, huh?
Wacky Wally. Wally, it's nice to make your acquaintance.
I hear you're a pretty smart guy. Do you know how many
This sounds like a lead-in. How many what?
feathers there is on a bird?
How many feathers are on a bird?
Yeah. No?
No.
Do you know how many hairs on a bee?
No.
No.
Well, do you know what time Cinderella had to go home from the ball?
At the bewitching hour of midnight.
Oh, see, he's pretty smart one way anyway. Don't know much about the birds and bees, but you know a lot about fairies, huh?
Oh, no. Thank you, Wacky Wally. That's leaving me speechless.
Good one, Wally.
Thumbs up on that. Oh, I tell you, ladies and gentlemen.
You know, you were talking about the concert business. A couple of observations.
Let's talk about that. Oh, before we talk about the concert business, we've got to talk and squeeze in here in the time we've got left, a little bit of time, about 5 minutes, I believe. Hydroplanes.
The unlimited.
The unlimited hydroplanes, ladies and gentlemen. This is the legendary PatO'Day, who calls for the last 30 years about hydroplanes. And I tell you, let's talk about that in our remaining
Ladies
time.
and gentlemen, Mark Evans is off the top of the turn. He's at the floating bridge, and the rooster tail goes high into the air. He's done the impossible. He was upside down in the first turn in Heat 1A, and he's going to win the 1997 Seafair Texaco Cup. I love doing hydroplanes.
Oh, isn't
That's
that
fun.
excellent? Ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a round of applause for that. PatO'Day doing the hydroplanes there.
Well, you know, we were talking about one of my idols was Leo Lassen.
Yes.
And although I became a disc jockey in radio and not a play-by-play announcer, that's my tribute to Leo. He made such an impression on me because Leo told me once, I got to meet him once, I was just awestruck, starstruck when I met him, but he told me, he said, you know, when the people turn on the radio and do you the honor of listening to you, he said, you better give them something. You better give them something.
Exactly.
And to me, that's what, if people are going to bother to turn on the radio during a hydroplane race, hey, I better give them fun. They didn't turn it on to be bored. They turned on for excitement. And I don't care if there's only one boat left running out there and it's running at 30 miles an hour. I'm going to tell them that that's the most exciting thing going on in the world. And that crew chief right then, the beads of sweat are going down his forehead and the people are afraid they'll run and the crew's out of money. If he comes across the line, they'll win $25,000. This is the biggest day of everybody's life.
That's right. That's right. And now let's get this official from your official mouth. I've heard that the hydroplanes have run for 48 years, or is it 47 years? I believe
1952 was the first race.
1952?
Yeah.
There wasn't any in 1949, 1950, or
No,
51?
no.
Oh, okay.
1952.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it here first.
Or was it 51?
Oh, well, whatever.
But I'll tell you what, I guarantee you it wasn't 49 or 50.
Okay.
There.
Okay.
I think it was 52, though.
Yes.
No, it was 51. You're that is 51 was the year.
I do occasionally get, people.
I think, look, senility is an ugly thing the way it creeps up on you. I think it was 51.
Boy, look out, ladies and gentlemen.
Maybe it was. I don't know.
You may be forgetting. You may be forgetting. I just want to let you know, ladies and gentlemen, and Pat, we've got a couple minutes left here, and we'll just kind of talk until we run out of time. I've really enjoyed, and I wish I had a full hour to have you here on Strummin Time Live, and this has been an absolute favorite.
Invite me back again sometime, because I'd love to tell your listeners and your viewers stories about the real Jimi Hendrix, who he was, what he was really like, the gentleman he was, one of the most soft, wonderful, kind, fabulous human beings there could be.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about all those people that made such great history in rock and roll.
Yeah, he did his last concert in 1970 in August before he went to England and passed away. Bummer. He was a
Bummer it was.
musician.
Bummer it was. But anyway, it'd be fun to talk about just those.
Yes.
It'd also be fun to talk about some of the great people that have spoke into the microphone in Seattle radio during the years of rock and roll. Some of the great disc jockeys.
We're gonna have you back here.
The scene.
We're gonna have you back here, and how about in a couple of months? Whatever.
In the meantime, I'm up in Friday Harbor.
Okay.
I'm in the real estate business up there, and you come up and see me.
I'll take my video
I'll
camera.
take you out salmon fishing, and
sounds great.
And we don't do much up there. We just talk to the trees.
I'd love to be able to take my video camera up there and do a special and
Well,
put it here on public access.
we'll do a special on the Spiden Channel while we fish for salmon and talk about rock and roll.
It's
now,
a done
is that
deal.
a winner?
That's a winner, ladies and gentlemen.
Bring Washboard,
good night, ladies and gentlemen.
Bring Washboard Mama with you. She can help us
Okay.
clean the fish.
All right, good night, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks
Good night,
again.
everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat, for coming on Strummin
Thank you,
Time
Curt,
Live.
for
All right,
having me
there you
on.
go. An exclusive happy 40th birthday, Commander Curt. Good night.
Happy birthday
to you.
Happy birthday
to me.
Curt.
Good night. Oh, thank you.